Tämä on nyt viimeinen ohjelma, jota esitetään nyt tänä sunnuntaina.
This is Doris Pellenpaw welcoming you around the world. TV6 Marquette.
Good evening and welcome to our TV6 60th anniversary special. The year is 1956. Dear Abby first appears in the newspapers. The Dow Jones closes above 500 for the first time. The ocean liner Andrea Doria sinks. Elvis Presley enters the U.S. music scene for the first time with Heartbreak Hotel. The DNA molecule is first photographed. And on April 28, 1956, WDMJ TV Channel 6 signs on the air. Over the next hour, we'll travel through 60 years of broadcast history here at TV6. We'll look at the early days of live broadcasting, the programs, the technology. We'll look at TV6 News from its infancy to today, and we'll look to the future of broadcasting. But there's no better place to start than at the beginning. Here's TV6's Don Ryan.
In the early 1950s, when families gathered in their living rooms looking for entertainment, the focus of their attention was usually a large floor model radio. Each night, families all over the country listened intently as the major radio networks brought them comedy, mystery, drama, and variety, featuring some of the nation's top entertainment. But around the country, something was happening to change all of that. It was called television. Television offered everything that radio could provide and a whole lot more. But in the early 50s, very few people in Upper Michigan could see this new form of entertainment.
Up here, a few skip signals came in. We were black and white. Iron Mountain received Green Bay once in a while, and Escanaba received Traverse City once in a while. Few were getting skip signals across from Canada, but the market was going to be something we would really have to build up.
Frank Russell, who owned newspapers and radio stations in several UP communities, seized the opportunity by opening a TV station in Marquette.
Frank owned 2 radio stations and the 3 leading newspapers in central UP, Iron Mountain, Escanaba, and Marquette. So we had to depend on them to definitely help us with the financing.
The studios were located in the top floor of what is now the Mining Journal building in downtown Marquette. We talked to Frank Russell's son, Jim, in that original location.
We're sitting in the radio studio for WDMJ Radio. My dad built this TV station as like an extension of WDMJ Radio, and it became WDMJ TV. WDMJ, it's W, it's for everybody had a W. East of the Mississippi, DMJ, Daily Mining Journal, the same as radio. You can see this window here is a view from the control room for radio. I'm not sure what happened to radio. I think it went to another building, but when Dad built TV, this became the main control room. And then in back of me, the whole rest of the building was the main, we had one main studio for TV.
We had one large studio that was very seldom used for radio. And we operated then, it was black and white TV, and we operated with one camera.
I mean, they just hung curtains there as far as I remember.
And we had permanent backdrops for our news and our weather and any other public relation programs we needed a special backdrop for. A fellow named Gene Sinervo was our art man. Okay. He operated in a room about 9 by 10, and that was our art studio.
It's like anything new, you just start it and sort of see where it goes and hope the wheels stay on.
It was a real challenge for the staff since everything, programming and commercials, were telecast live. But there was other local programming as well. A band called the Hiawatha Ramblers became a regular feature.
Once you went on the air, that was it. we'd have a list of what we were going to do to remind us what the next song was and what key it was going to be in and who was doing it. And
just because you think you're so pretty, well, buddy, just because you think you're so hot, 2, 3, 4, just because you think you got something that nobody else has. Oh, you sweetie, you bunch of me.
it was just a lot of fun doing it.
By the early 60s, the station had a new owner and a new office and studio building, which provided new opportunities for local programming. The kids shows were a staple with many local stations, and TV6 was no exception. Our first kids show was called Darby 06, and Darby himself, Roy Peterson, recalls the origins of the show.
Station manager came down to the floor here, to the studio floor where I was running camera, and said, we're going to have a children's program. We'd like you to do it. And that was on a Thursday. And I said, well, I've never done anything like that before.
By the following Monday, the show was on the air, offering its own unique blend of fun and information for kids. Cooking shows are commonplace on television today, but Gordon Ramsay and his colleagues had nothing on Ingrid Bartelli, the district agent for Michigan State University Extension Service. Ingrid started her own weekly show on TV6 in the early 60s. At Home with Ingrid was one of the first cooking shows in the country, and as you might imagine, a special favorite of the staff at TV6. They knew that when Ingrid was there, her cuisine was there too. And of course, after the show, someone had to eat that delicious meal she had prepared, making for a great lunch that day. Other live local programming in those early days included the March of Dimes Telethon, which first went on the air in 1961. The original telethons featured all live local programming for the entire duration, and that meant all local acts or bands performing in the studio. It was semi-organized chaos for hours on end, with people coming from around the UP to showcase their talent. The telethon also started a commitment to community service that has continued at TV6 for over 60 years. More on that later in the show. The 50s and 60s were truly a great time, as many people worked to bring the magic of television to Upper Michigan.
I think Frank Russell especially deserves a big hand, and all the people that were involved locally with the job they did with what we had to operate with, I think was, I always said they did a super job to bring TV to the UP.
And by the time the 70s rolled around, the station was moving forward, buying new equipment and expanding the staff to take TV6 into the next generation.
Those were the early years at TV6, but it quickly became clear that a major part of TV6's identity would center on news, weather, and sports. Many of you might remember what the news looked like in those early days. I've been around for 36 years. We'll check out 60 years of your TV6 news as our journey continues. The evolution of your TV6 news over the past 60 years is like going from a biplane to the space shuttle. Everything has changed except one constant: the people of Upper Michigan. Here's Greg Trick.
From Upper Michigan's news source, this is your TV6 News Tonight.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Greg Trek.
And I'm Sophie Erber.
The news that comes into your home on a nightly basis has changed a great deal since TV6 went on the air 60 years ago. In fact, there wasn't much of a news gathering operation until the late Irv Horton came along in 1965. He was the first news director at TV6. He sat down with us 10 years ago and remembered when it was just a three-man news department that covered the entire UP. And they were expected to do it all.
Not only did I go out and do the stories like that, you know, take film of it, and we didn't have any videotapes in, just film. So I make film, come back, and I had to develop the film too.
But covering the UP was a job made easier thanks to Irv's skills as a pilot. He would fly all over the UP, get the stories on film, and write them while flying back. Irv was the pioneer who helped the news department get off the ground, but it's Steve Asplund who's been the cornerstone of the newsroom for 36 years. You know him as the anchor of the TV6 Early News, but he's also the news director who's done every job there is in the newsroom. The technological advancements have made that job easier and improved our coverage.
you're able to shoot video in the field, turn it around, and send it right back. And even with the cell phone technology today, you can do something live in the field that was not even a thought back then, because it was so much involving of coming back here to the station to actually get it done. And now it's, when you shoot it, you put it into a computer and you got pictures.
While the technology in the newsroom has changed, the mission has not.
I think it's always been just to let the public know what's happened throughout the day. Since they're off at work or doing something else, they don't get that opportunity to see what's happened, whether it's a school board meeting or if it's an accident or whatever, you know, to kind of give them an update on what the day has been like. And on top of that, maybe add some humor to their day and give it a little levity to it.
TV6 has covered the big stories over the years, such as President Obama's visit to the UP in 2011.
It is wonderful to be here in the Upper Peninsula with so many Yoopers.
But the big news stories, such as a presidential visit, don't happen that often in Upper Michigan, which is why the type of news you see on TV6 is different than what you would see in a big city. A wayward moose or the guy who put out his neighbor's house fire with a snowblower are more likely to grab the headlines.
We don't have the murder, mayhem, government corruption that a Detroit or Chicago might have, but at the same time, what we present is what we have in our area, which is, you know, good people, characters.
And of course, we have interesting weather. People always want to know the forecast, and trying to predict it has come a long way since Don Ryan was the weatherman in the 1960s.
I was not a meteorologist, definitely not a meteorologist. I didn't know anything about the weather. We didn't have anything. We didn't have computer graphics. We didn't have any kind of weather. Didn't even have a thermometer for that matter. But we had the Weather Bureau in Marquette. And I would call them every day, and they would give me a lot of information over the phone, and I would take that information and then bring it out to the studio and put it on these weather boards that we had set up, weather maps, national map, regional map, and they would give me all the highs and the lows and the fronts and the temperatures.
From Weather Center 6, I'm meteorologist Carl Bonak.
Today, it's meteorologist Carl Bonak who people turn to for the forecast. He has nearly 30 years of experience predicting the weather in the UP. He says computer forecast models are much more sophisticated than what they used to be.
Back in the old days, we had a thermal recorder that would spew out our maps. We'd watch them come out slowly. We had to hand plot some of our maps. Now everything's available on the internet. It's amazing. It's more accurate in the short term at least. You know, there's still, once you get out beyond 5 days, it's still a lot of uncertainty. But if there's, let's say, a big storm coming up, a lot of times the computer models we look at will kind of lock in on at least the fact that a storm is developing even a week ahead of time.
From a personal perspective, I've also witnessed a lot of changes in the news department since I started in 1991. The cameras are much lighter and more reliable. Computers have taken the place of typewriters, and we now have 3 bureaus, Houghton, Escanaba, and Iron Mountain. We've also added several more hours of news each week, including Fox UP. The newsroom staff has grown to 28, and I've seen a lot of people come and go. But one thing has remained the same since my first day on the job 25 years ago. Steve Asplund is still anchoring the news, Carl Bonak is still forecasting the weather, and Mike Ludlam is still covering local sports. It's that experience from people who call the UP home that shapes the product you see on the air every night.
There was a lot more than just the news on TV6. We'll share some of those memorable local programs with you when we return. News is a large part of what TV6 has aired over the past 6 decades, but it's the specials, like the one you're watching now, that people remember years later. TV6's Scott Zerbel jogs your memory banks with a look at some of the locally produced programming over the last 60 years.
Over the years, TV6 has made a special effort to bring local programming to our viewers. In our infancy, local programming was for the most part live from our studio above the Mining Journal building in downtown Marquette. In 1956, when TV6 debuted, audiences were given the opportunity to not only hear, but see Ted Hansen, WDMJ TV's first continuity director and studio cameraman, as he displayed his musical talents on organ melodies, one of the earliest programs created for Upper Michigan audiences. On March 25, 1962, TV6 would debut a program based on a very simple concept.
Hyvää huomenta. Good morning. This is Doris Pellenpaw welcoming you to join my husband Carl for Suomikutsu Finland Calling.
To play Finnish music, talk to Finnish guests, and promote tours. And we've been doing that since 1962.
Hyvää huomenta. 2 viikon.
And it was never expected to last over 54 years.
Back then, we thought if the show lasts a couple of years, the older Finns, the immigrants, will have died and the show would end. Well, I told the folks at the dance on the 22nd of March, I said, they haven't died yet. The pride of my heritage that I have, that pride has not diminished one bit.
Carl retired in the spring of 2015, but his legacy will live on. Viewers enjoyed watching a variety of local programs in the 1970s. Camera 6 was a news and information program that aired twice weekly and dealt with topical information of interest to viewers. At that time, TV6 News also produced special news programs, like the special program that aired in 1972 that featured Democratic presidential candidates George Wallace and Hubert Humphrey, who came to Upper Michigan when invited by our news department, an occurrence that would probably not be possible in today's political climate. In December of 1973, Upper Michigan Today would debut, bringing the people and places from across Upper Michigan into viewers' homes middays Monday through Friday. Carl Pellenpaw was the program's first host and would be involved with the program for many years to come.
Well, you've certainly done that. And also over here is Al Meaves. All he does all day, right, is watch television, right? Okay, we're going.
Longtime Upper Michigan Today producer and host Susan McQuaid had fond memories of working on the program.
We worked a lot of hours, but we had a lot of fun. It was a great family atmosphere. But it was the people of the UP that really made the Upper Michigan Today program what it was. It was them giving their secrets. It was them giving up their time. We rolled it all into one for Upper Michigan Today.
With me now is Pete Cittadino.
One of the more popular segments on Upper Michigan Today was the weekly cooking segment. The late Don Curto was a frequent guest chef on the UMT cooking segment. His popularity led to a monthly cooking program titled Cooking with Curto that aired on TV6 in the early 1990s. Who would have guessed at that time that the popularity of cooking programs would result in 2 cable networks dedicated to nothing but cooking?
Whitefish, of course, is one of the world's great fish, and it's a very gentle fish, the way I think of it. It poaches well and it steams particularly well, and I give it a try.
Upper Michigan Today would experience an evolution in September of 1992, when then host Cynthia Thompson would say goodbye to the Upper Michigan Today audience.
And thank you very much for being with us here on Upper Michigan Today. Again, I've only been involved a little over a year, but the show's been on for 18 plus years, and we appreciate you here at TV6. We are going to hope that you join us for the TV6 News Extra. That will debut on Tuesday, the 29th of September, right here on TV6 at 7 o'clock. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.
First Monday was a popular evening program that aired on the first Monday of every month. The news magazine program hit the air in the early 1980s and took in-depth looks at subject matter of interest to the people of Upper Michigan. Former First Monday producer Mike Settles talks about the popularity of the program.
There are a lot of news magazine shows out there. I think people can't get enough of what's going on around them. In the last 5 or 10 years, the news shows have just gained and gained and gained in popularity. And I think, like I said, it's just because we want to know what's going on around us. We want to see our neighbors. We want to see ourselves if we can get out there. It beats the fantasy land sometimes to actually see things that are actually happening.
First Monday would change its name in the late 1980s to Upper Michigan Tonight, but the tradition of providing in-depth coverage of important information would continue through the mid-1990s. Over the years, TV6 would head out into the field to provide unique programs for our audience. Coverage of the boys' Class C and D regional finals was a tradition at TV6 for many years. Moving from the gym into the outdoors, we provided live coverage of the start of the UP 200 in downtown Marquette. Each February, our crews would brave the often frigid temperatures to bring viewers a taste of what it's like to experience the start of the UP 200.
That is Pat Faraday from Saginaw, Minnesota, heading out of Marquette on the UP 200. This is 246 miles of trail.
TV6 has a tradition of producing one-time-only special programs for our viewers. Whether you desire to head out into the woods of the Keweenaw during the legendary Press On Regardless Road Rally, or experience the thrill of ski jumping from Giant Pine Mountain, TV6 brought you there. Discovering originated in 1980 when Buck Levasseur convinced TV6 management that there was a need to cover the outdoors with more in-depth reporting. Buck would test the viability of that theory by producing a monthly series of programs titled Upper Michigan Outdoors.
And so in the month of June, July, and August, each one of those months, I did a 1 half-hour special. Hi, I'm Buck Levasseur, your host for these Upper Michigan Outdoor Summer Specials. We think we have a quite interesting show lined up for you on this June edition, so stay tuned for an intimate look at the sharp-tailed grouse. And it went over real well. So the following year, I suggested to the station that let's take this one step further and let's go into a weekly show.
Buck's passion for the outdoors came through each week on Discovery. Although Buck covered many different subjects on the program over the years, it was the people that he brought into our homes that made that program very special.
Saul was one of those guys where you ask one question, stand back. You don't have to work on him to get an answer. His answer was simple. Buck, you should have seen the deer all 20, 30 a day.
When you see 30, 40, 50 a day, then you're seeing deer.
I just sat there with a big smile on my face and couldn't believe what I was capturing.
Buck has retired and passed the discovering torch on to Brian Whitens, who continues the long tradition of bringing the great outdoors of Upper Michigan into viewers' homes every Monday night. TV6 continues to provide the local programs our viewers have come to expect. From regular programs like the Ryan Report to live local sports coverage like the sports rivalry between Michigan Tech and Northern Michigan University in hockey, football, basketball, and volleyball, to special programs like UP Power featuring state champion football teams from Upper Michigan and the life and times of Carl Pellenpaugh. TV6 continues to be there to bring you the local programs you enjoy.
We use the phrase someplace special because Upper Michigan is just that, someplace special. And next, we'll show you why. Upper Michigan residents are a hardy people drawn together by geography and weather. But sometimes people need help to get through the rough times. In those instances, the community and TV6 have come together. Don Ryan tells us how TV6 helps the UP community care for its own.
We talked about telethons in the early 60s as a way to give back to the community that allowed TV6 to grow and prosper. But those programs were merely a prelude to the overall commitment to community service that gives TV6 our identity even today. Making a difference is part of a long history of helping our community. We think it's our responsibility to do all we can to make Upper Michigan a better place to live. In fact, we look at the UP as one giant town. From one end to the other, it's people who identify with this place we call Upper Michigan. And TV6's mission has always been to foster that sense of community. Telethons, special programs featuring the people and places of Upper Michigan, even our newscasts done multiple times every day, serve to show the people of the UP just who we are. But nothing in the history of TV6 has done more to embody that spirit than the TV6 Canathon. The Canathon originated in 1982 here at TV6. This annual fall food collection effort has grown from a Marquette County event to something that has a positive impact on the entire Upper Peninsula. The late Ed Carney was news director here at TV6 in the early 80s, which was a particularly rough time economically here in the UP. People were struggling, and Ed had an idea.
So that's when I went to Tom Gagnon and I says, you know, why don't we try to do something up here to try to help out those people, especially those who are unemployed, until they get back on their feet. And so that's when we came up, you know, with this idea to have a food drive. We didn't call it, I don't think, a Canathon, that first one. And now it's more of a UP-wide type of event now, whereas at that time it was more of like a Marquette County type of thing. So that's how much it's expanded, and now they're getting hundreds of thousands of pounds of food every year, and still helping people, because you'll always find that no matter what the situation, people are still in need out there. There are a lot of them that just need a helping hand, and that's what the Canathon is all about.
Since the Canathon began, over 3 million pounds of food has been collected and distributed to help feed a hungry neighbor in Upper Michigan. TV6 also gives back to the community through sponsorship of local events and fundraisers. From the United Way campaign, Big Brothers and Big Sisters, and the Polar Plunge, to the Nakamanon Ski Challenge and the Orta Shore Classic, TV6 sponsors over 50 events every year. Why? We feel it's our obligation to the area because we're as much a part of the UP as every one of the events or causes we promote. We have a stake in the success of everything that goes on in the community, not only business-wise, but nonprofit activities, events, and fundraisers, things that help Upper Michigan be someplace special. Something we talk about all the time. It's an important concept that extends to the success of things that are happening in the UP. That's why we contribute so much free airtime to those events and activities. We want them to succeed. We want Upper Michigan to be truly someplace special.
It seems like Upper Michigan has been someplace special forever, and in some ways it has been. But the story of the Upper Michigan Someplace Special promotion reaches back to 1980. Up next, you'll meet someone who was there and was instrumental in making it happen.
You get the feeling it's right for you. Someplace special. To find yourself in a happy mood. Someplace special. There's only one thing that you can do. Find someplace special to be. To settle back with an old friend. For times together you'd like to spend. Someplace special. TV6 Marquette. It's friends and neighbors who really care.
Some of you might remember that classic Someplace Special commercial. It was an early version of the Someplace Special campaign. The year was 1980, and former TV6 employee Larry DeLoria was there.
We were looking for a campaign slogan, something that we could put on television, and especially we wanted something that would make Upper Michigan proud of itself. At the time, things weren't going really good here as far as businesses and everything else. It was sort of a downtime. And so Roland Gustafson did the actual artwork that we used on it. Jack LaForest, who was the program manager, wrote the lyrics for it.
For the jingle.
And yeah, and I went down and shot video to put everything together. No budget. My daughter was down at Ferris at the time, and so I grabbed my son, who was traveling with me, and the three of us did the shot where they came across the bridge, and he was hitchhiking, and we see him finally getting home, and there was my wife. He was hugging his mother, and my daughter was driving the car, and it worked out pretty good. That was a good one.
Well, everybody started out from somewhere, and that somewhere calls them back no matter where they roam. Well, you're a very lucky guy if you feel the same as I about that old familiar place that you call home. Upper Michigan, someplace special. You're a very special part of me. Upper Michigan, you're special. In the sunshine, rain, or snow, we will always know. Upper Michigan, you're special. Your peninsula so wide, love your people and their pride. Upper Michigan, you're special. TV6 Marquette.
People would smile when they saw it. People were proud to wear the shirts or the caps, or it drew everybody together. Just some restoration of pride. It's easy to be negative. This was very positive. and it paid off.
We retired Upper Michigan Someplace Special in 2008, but the demand for the Someplace Special campaign was so strong, we brought it back 5 years later. We used the occasion to run a contest, asking our viewers to write the new Upper Michigan Someplace Special song. And out of 40 entries, here's the winner.
From the sandy shores to the deep dark trees, lovers and friends build memories. There's no other land like this heavenly space, where present and past meet face to face. Oh, Upper Michigan. Oh, Upper Michigan. It's a place where the stars and the eagles fly, and northern lights dance in the sky. A place where the deer in the walleye roam, where tales from the past remain unknown. Oh, Upper Michigan. Oh, Upper Michigan. It's someplace special.
The Upper Michigan Someplace Special theme shapes everything we do here at TV6, and we will continue to use it into the foreseeable future. As Upper Michigan's news source from the very beginning, TV6 has been there for the big stories. Up next, to look at the top news stories of the past 6 decades. From the premiere of Otto Preminger's classic movie Anatomy of a Murder to the visits of 2 sitting presidents to Upper Michigan, TV6 has covered big stories of the past 60 years. Vicki Crystal reports.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
For the past 60 years, WLUC has been keeping you in touch with events impacting our world. As we reflect, we explore the ways Upper Michigan has shaped the world. It started as a murder trial in Marquette County. The defense lawyer, John Volker, using his experience to write a novel. Anatomy of a Murder was later developed into a movie, filmed on location in Ishpeming, Marquette, and Big Bay. And the movie went on to win 7 Academy Awards and other honors around the world. Of course, the Upper Peninsula has long supplied the world with raw materials needed to boost industry for more than a century. Not just lumber from our expansive forests, but from digging underground to mine copper, iron, gold, and more. As years of mining and a changing world economy took its toll, mines like the White Pine, Ropes, and Empire closed. Meanwhile, new deposits continue to be explored and opened.
And we were kind of here to protect the Sulaks and the mines that we've got. We didn't want somebody attacking the mines, which would be a direct attack on our economy, you know. But then eventually they decided they had to have more, and they had to convince Russia that if you attack us, you're probably going to lose. We'll probably all lose, in fact. So that's when they decided to bring in tankers and bombers.
K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base opened just prior to the first broadcast here on TV6. Over the next 40 years, the base saw many changes, and by 1995, the world had changed, and K.I. Sawyer Air Force Base was closed. This closure eventually led to the development of Sawyer International Airport. And having these large runways available to the public led to 2 exciting visits for Upper Michigan. First, in July of 2004, President George W. Bush traveled to Marquette. It had been 60 years since the last sitting president came to the UP. The wait for the next visit wouldn't be as long. In February of 2011, Air Force One brought President Barack Obama to Upper Michigan, where he touted the technological advances being put in place at NMU. But it was tragedy that most people connect with the big lake they call Gitchagumi. November 10th, 1975, as the Edmund Fitzgerald, loaded with iron ore, sinks 17 miles off the shore of Whitefish Bay. All 29 men on board are lost and become part of the lore of the Great Lakes. Of course, weather has given Upper Michigan a bit of a reputation. 2016 saw perfect conditions for tornadic activity over the summer, spawning waterspouts and leading to flooding damage in the western UP. And it was a historic flood that hit in 1985.
85 was, they call it the 100-year flood. There was heavy snow in the spring and then heavy rain on top of the thick snow cover, and instantly it got up to 80 degrees. And that was in the middle of April, actually the 19th, 20th of April, and all of a sudden the snow just disappeared, and that caused the historic flood. Much of upper Michigan in '85 was inundated, especially the western highlands into the Marquette area, with historic levels on the rivers and plenty of damage.
Conditions that were also seen in 2002, leading to flood damage in several counties. Of course, summer can see a 180 on the water situation, with drought-like conditions leading to wildfire dangers. Several large forest fires became legend. The Seney National Wildlife Refuge fire in 1976, it burned for months deep within the peat. The blaze on the Stonington Peninsula in 1988 could be seen for miles, and most of these large forests don't seem to impact our daily lives, but some have taken a toll on personal property. In May 2009, fire broke out on County Road 581 in Ishpeming, destroying 20 homes, and the 2013 Labor Day weekend blaze in Ontonagon destroyed an entire block of River Street. Of course, our weather is what the rest of the nation shakes their heads about, and many Yoopers just laugh at. That's our winters. However, even the hardiest of locals were amazed at Thanksgiving 1985. It was a massive winter storm that hit at a time when many people would be on the roads. Rain turned to snow, roads became impassable. Authorities were forced to close roads, including US 41 between Marquette and Houghton. Holiday travelers sought shelter wherever they could. Here at TV6, the weekend news team was forced to stay put, snowed in at work. And by the time it was done, more than 30 inches of snow was reported in the hills west of Marquette. Ironwood checked in at 19.5 inches with 5-foot drifts of snow. Other areas reported between 15 and 20 inches of snow. In addition to big snows, temperatures can drop, like it did in the winter of 2013-2014.
It was 93, 94 was the big freeze up, and the most recent one, of course, was 13, 14. Not quite as extremely cold, but it was consistent cold, December, February, March into April, and that caused record ice cover on Lake Superior and a lot of freeze ups too, and discomfort for a lot of people, because that people had to keep their water running because their pipes were frozen, and that really caused a lot of headaches and problems across the entire Upper Peninsula, and actually the entire Midwest.
As you may notice, when the weather turns to winter, that means Yoopers get outside and show their sisu. Being the birthplace of organized skiing in America led to the formation of the U.S. National Ski and Snowboard Hall of Fame in Ishpeming, the same community where ski jumping became the winter sport of choice for the bravest of skiers. Copper Peak and Ironwood took the sport to new heights, literally, before closing. And the love of the sport continues to this day at Pine Mountain and Iron Mountain. Our determination to play through the year helped spark a new idea in the 80s, when Northern Michigan University proposed the United States Olympic Education Center, giving athletes the opportunity to train while going to school. The Superior Dome became the centerpiece for the school. This later led to the development of the Berry Event Center, where U.S. Olympians came for speed skating trials. Northern Michigan University was also the campus of choice for two young men from Iron Mountain in the 70s. Afterwards, Steve Mariucci went on to coach football, bringing his talents to several NFL teams, and Tom Izzo found his place at Michigan State University, leading the Spartan basketball team repeatedly to national championship courts.
Things don't let me come down to help my own cause.
But sometimes it's the big dreams of small-town folks that move the world the most. 19-year-old Eric Dompier dreamed of finishing out his time at Ishpeming High School, playing for the Hematite football team. Age limitations were standing in his way. Eric, his family, teammates, and the community took on the Michigan education system and won. Eric took to the field with his team. He went on to help them win the state championship, along with the Sports Illustrated Sportsman of the Year award.
With our look at the past complete, we now move on to what's ahead for TV6. We'll share that with you next. We ask ourselves from time to time, what does the future hold? You know, if the past 60 years are any indication, the changes for TV6 and the broadcast industry in general will be amazing. Nick Turbrack looks at the year 2017 and beyond.
What do we got?
Stand. Of course nobody saw anything.
When you think of television, many people think of tech specs such as HD,
3D, 4K, and even 8K. And television will no doubt be in a never-ending game of trying to keep up with the latest and greatest tech. But what about how we consume television?
You know, 20 years from now, I mean, this is just a guess, but my guess is that local television stations will just be local television stations. There won't be any network affiliation. You know, it's as Wi-Fi expands in the country and as more and more parts of the country are able to access Wi-Fi, the networks, they're already streaming their programming on their own mobile apps. You know, NBC is streaming their programming on NBC, the NBC mobile app. There's an NBC Sports mobile app where they're streaming all of their sports. So, you know, 20 years from now, I think that, you know, the networks are going to be doing their own thing.
NBC, Fox, they're still going to be here. It's just going to be the way they get it to the viewer. You know, they're going to make it so much easier for the viewer to get. Fox is already live streaming their prime time, so if you don't have an antenna, you can go online and watch all of their shows in real time. You know, you're going to start seeing the other networks do that. You're going to start seeing them able to get it on an Apple TV, on a Roku, on any of those other devices.
So that leaves us with the opportunity to fill all of this space that the networks used to take up with primetime programming, with sports programming. So it's really going to be on us to develop local content, syndicated content, to fill in the blanks of where the networks left. You know, we're still the local television station. We're still the television station of the Upper Peninsula, right? So the Upper Peninsula and the people still rely on us to provide them local news, local sports, and local weather. And how we deliver it, to me, that's still the big question mark, is how we deliver it. But I think a lot of it will be streamed. Like I said, if you can't get us over the air, you'll be able to stream us. And who knows, maybe 20 years from now, you know, there won't be a need for over-the-air broadcasting. Everything will just be done through, you know, streaming services.
The local news stations, local programming, there's going to be much more opportunity for them to grow. For instance, you know, right now we're built on 30-minute blocks. That could go away online. It could be 42 minutes. It could be 13 minutes. There's no time frame. You know, so there's more opportunity to put in more content that viewers might like. You know, it could be a short little snip midweek. Hey, here's what we're doing now, like you see kind of on Facebook Lives. Or it might be a completely hour-long Ryan Report special that airs only online. The future of TV is really just going to come down to more content readily available to its viewers, wherever they are.
So while we can't really know exactly how the future of television will unfold, we can be sure that you, the viewer, will be the focus and benefit the most.
I'll be back with some final thoughts after these messages. It's a tall order to compress 60 years of memories and history into 1 hour. For those of you who have grown up with TV6, there have been many changes from networks to news people. From its humble beginnings on the top floor of the Mining Journal building in 1956 with just a handful of people, WLUC has grown to include a staff of almost 60 people, 3 channels, and an ever-increasing presence through social media and online. But our mission has not changed in 60 years, and that is to bring the best possible news, information, and entertainment to the people of Upper Michigan. We hope you've enjoyed our look back at the history of TV6. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Thank you.